Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is the college edition. We'll have the Super 7 that we'll be going over with you. But first, let's introduce the host of the show, Vincent Turner. I'm Harper LeBel. Vincent, anything from last week stick out to you in terms of how good we predicted games or any of the action that you saw that was noteworthy?
Well, I'd like to say first and foremost, how everybody doing out there, our audience here at 100 Yards of Football. Last week, what more can you say? The University of Alabama, what you need to do is you may need to really understand, don't underestimate teams that get up for you. Kudos to the people down there in the 615, the Vanderbilt Commodores and Coach Clark Lee. That was stuck out of my mind, first of all. Second of all, very disappointed in my Tennessee Volunteers. Josh Heupel in the offense, y'all on the hot seat. For the last 2 weeks against Oklahoma and the University of Arkansas, my old school, you have not performed at a high level. So you can put up 60 points against UTC and Boom Boom State University, but that doesn't mean nothing when you play top-level competition. And finally, what I learned about last week, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I got a new name for the university. Track meet, NFL talent, all over the field. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Track meet you, or would it be the Track Meet University of Ohio State? Oh, my goodness. That's going to take too long when you get all those numerous peoples that read their name at the beginning of a Sunday night show. Vincent Turner, the Ohio State Track Meet University. I don't know if you're going to get that much time to be able to say that.
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But how about, hey, one thing that stuck out in my mind about last week, did you see how many Roll Tide ended up in Tennessee? And they filled the stands. There was a little section from like the 20-yard line to the goal line. If here's the 50, the 20, that's where the locals sat.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't even fill that up. But boy, it was standing room only if you were rooting for the Tide. And unfortunately for Alabama, they just they brought an A game, but they didn't bring their A+ game against Vanderbilt.
Can I ask a question, please? After the game, what was some Roll Tide fans at? I'm just
they left.
They left, right?
They weren't on the field stealing goalposts or damaging them. They didn't do that.
And then Monday morning, they half of their fan base is asking for the head of Kalen DeBoer and the defensive coordinator. Alabama, I'm going to say it one more time. Expectations, you need to tone it down a little bit. This not Leonard Skinner, Sweet Home Alabama. I'm going to say today, the University of Alabama, you need to tone it down. Sweet Home Alabama. Back to you, Mr. LeBel.
Well, I'm you know, you get through an SEC schedule without any losses, you deserve right then and there to be a national champion. They still have a lot of games to play, and they're going to play a lot better. You can assume that one of the reasons they're on this week's list, we'll talk about in a little bit, is I feel sorry to be a South Carolina Gamecock right now, because I think Alabama's they're going to roll you up. I just think so. They may not. South Carolina may bring their A game. I'm just saying, what a grueling schedule it is. As Dave Cohen, our friend who's been on the show at Georgia State, has said on numerous times, he says, you got to go through a gauntlet, and it's not easy. But let's look and see what we have upcoming for this week. We'll begin with the local action. Here are the teams that are from the state of Georgia, and State coming here. They'll be playing the number 5 Bulldogs. Georgia with a nice win again last week. They'll be taking on another tough competitor, Mississippi State. Our second game, we're going to look at Georgia Tech coming off a bye week. They're going to go to North Carolina. They'll be playing up there at UNC. Old Dominion, the Monarchs, are going to be at Georgia State. That game will be in Atlanta. The Marshall, the Thundering Herd from Marshall, will be visiting at Statesboro. They'll be going against Georgia Southern. This next game has a little bit of interest to me just because of the prestige that's a part of it. Mercer is going to go up to Princeton and play the Tigers up there. What a cool game that is. If you've never been up to Princeton or in that part of New Jersey, and to have the whole city named after the college and vice versa, it's a pretty interesting part of Americana. And yes, sir.
You're throwing shots, man. We know Princeton's a high-level Ivy school, man.
I know.
You defended the people from Mercer, man.
No, it's a great game that they get to go. And if you're one of the freshmen, let's say, that's on that roster and you get to make that trip, that'll be one you'll remember, for the rest of your life. Even if you're a senior, I'm saying
Yes.
the freshmen may have other trips that might surpass that, but that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, sir.
Middle Tennessee State is at Kennesaw State. That game will be here in Kennesaw, of course. West Georgia goes to Central Arkansas. And then finally, we'll be looking at Valdosta State. It'll be going to South Carolina and playing North Greenville. And that's a look at our local games.
What sticks out to me is on these local games, I want to give kudos to Valdosta State. Tremaine Jackson, y'all still undefeated.
Yep.
Kudos down there. Mississippi State at Georgia. Georgia last week bounced back with a very impressive win over Auburn, 31-13. A lot of people still down on Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, and saying Carson Beck is not playing like he did last year. All I'm going to say to the Dog fans, just take a chill pill. Y'all still, in my opinion, the best team in the country. And it's going to be proven over the next few weeks. Just chill down there in Athens, Georgia. Y'all still got the best team in the country, man. And my final words, Georgia Tech and North Carolina. Now, Georgia Tech, every year since I've been here in my last 28 years, there's been some good teams at Georgia Tech, and I've always said they're going to break through and win that one game that's going to get them on the national level. And this season, when you coming in, we got 12 teams in the college football playoffs, and after Georgia Tech beat Florida State, I said, man, this might be the year the 404 can be in the college football playoffs. Well, you know what happened. They lose to Syracuse. They come back and lose to Louisville. And they beat a good Duke team last week. All I'm going to say is this, Brent Key, you got Notre Dame coming up in a couple of weeks, man. Don't go lose that game in North Carolina and Mac Brown, who I think is on the hot seat. They 3-3. Because remember, North Carolina gave up 70 points to James Madison a few weeks ago. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Yeah, that was a very interesting loss there for North Carolina. A lot of folks at James Madison were saying it's about time. But yes, 70 points to a non-Power 5. Ooh, that's a busy day.
That's what I call losing games like that. Get your job, you get fired, and you quickly become, as the great Ohio players, fire.
Well, hey, you got to think of it also this way. James Madison's for real, and they have been now for a couple years. All right, let's look at some of the Super 7. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can focus a little bit better. We're going to start with the Thursday game, and you'll be seeing some of these games here for the rest of the season. The MAC games, there'll be a Western Athletic Conference game. There'll be an AAC game. There'll be a Mountain West game. In this case, we're going to look at the Sun Belt Conference. Two teams coming out of that portion, the eastern part of the conference. You've got 4-1 Coastal Carolina. They'll be going against 4-1 James Madison. Madison has beaten Charlotte, Gardner-Webb. They beat UNC, as we mentioned. They lost to ULM, University of Louisiana Monroe, by 2 points. And so they're going to be looking for a little bit of revenge there. But this game between two teams that you're probably not going to pay a whole lot of attention to, but are critical for the Sun Belt Conference in terms of the importance of just getting through that Eastern Division. Coastal Carolina, their only loss of the season was to Virginia. They lost 43-24. That was a couple weeks ago. Ethan Vasco is completing 57% of his passes. He has 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Christian Washington. He is averaging 5.2 per carry, and he has 4 touchdowns here on the season. Vincent, your thoughts on this game?
You got two very good football teams. You just mentioned both of them 4-1. This is a big game in the Sun Belt Conference, and don't really get surprised. The winner of this game may be able to run the table. Next thing we know, we're going to talk about them maybe being an outside Power 5 school that makes the college football playoffs. These are two very good football teams.
Yeah, if this were last year, James Madison was undefeated going into that Appalachian State game in week 11, if I'm not mistaken. So they've been playing some great football over the past couple of years. People thought when their coach left and they had a transfer portal issue where a couple of the guys went with him that they would fall off to the wayside. But again, the only loss they have is ULM. ULM is an improving program, but they're led by Alonzo Barnett, 57% completion for him. He's got 1,273 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 1 interception for James Madison. George Pettaway, 5.8 yards per carry, and he has 2 touchdowns. But that is one of our games of the week. The other is going to be on Friday night. Utah is 4-1. They go against Arizona State 4-1. Who would have thought that Arizona State at 4-1 at this point of the season would be a team worthy of playing against not only a top 25 team, but if they win at home there in Tempe, they're in the driver's seat, at least early on in terms of the ACC and its coverage there. Your thoughts, Vincent?
I'm very surprised Utah lost last week, a home game to Arizona. I thought they was one of them teams that we can really start talking about being a serious contender and making the college playoffs. I'm really looking at Utah from the quarterback position. Cam Rising has been hurt somewhat this year. They've been trying to go with Zach Wilson's little brother, and last week he struggled mightily in that loss to Arizona. Arizona State, like you said, Mr. Harper LeBel, they shocking the world out there. Sam Lovett is a phenomenal quarterback, outstanding talent. John Jefferson and Danny White look like that might be coming back through them doors. Kudos to the Sun Devils.
Yeah. Things change all the time, but at least for this particular game, Cam Rising, I 3 years ago he was going to be a number 1 pick, and now we're just trying to figure out how he's going to stay in the lineup because he keeps getting hurt. Hey, another game. Now, the way we pick these games, and each week from time to time, there's more than 8 that I want to talk about. And one of them for this week is 4-1 Memphis going to South Florida. 1, Memphis is pretty doggone good. We want to talk about the game itself. But 2, and probably most importantly, is the condition because of the hurricane and everything that's going. We don't even know at this time whether or not they're going to even get to host the game. There's a lot going on. And Vincent, your thoughts in terms of everything that's going on in Middle Florida?
I want to say this to the people in Middle Florida. My prayers are with all the people down there based on what has happened 2 weeks ago with the previous hurricane we had. That is a very serious situation. All indications I've been getting out of Memphis and Reno area Memphis newspapers that they're not going to make a decision till Thursday afternoon. So me personally, I would cancel the game right now because it's not about the football game, man. That is a very serious situation that's going to happen down there in Florida today.
Yeah, the safety of everybody involved, and then look at it from the business perspective. Just to know that there's so many people that have been told to evacuate and that can't go to the game even if they're not there. They won't be able to do it. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Obviously, you've got television, you've got the makeup schedule, you've got practicing or walkthroughs, you've got hotel accommodations. There's a lot that goes into a decision like this. But I think the best thing would be is if there is a mutually agreed upon later date that the game could either be made up or where the teams have the opportunity to pick up a game. I know it's too late in the schedule to actually just throw that out there without having to deal with all the other things that are involved with it. But those are some possibilities. But first and foremost, the safety of the people in the area, obviously the players, the fans, the students, everybody that's a part of that. So that's one of the games that I was going to feature, but for obvious reasons, we may not even have a game. So we moved to others. Any other thoughts, Vincent?
Just want to say prayers to all the people down there in Tampa, Florida, man, and be safe. And I hope everything, although it looks like a very serious situation, it might not happen I want to say the advantage other people down there, but I want to say this. My prayers, once again, is to all the people in Florida, and please be safe. And if you're still there, get to a place that's very safe.
Yeah, absolutely. My prayer that damage would be minimal and property would be kept whole and safe for everybody. It's a huge storm. We pray that would diminish mightily when it hits land. All right, back to football. Let's talk a little bit. Oh, another game that I did want to mention. Well, we'll do it after this. Let's talk about Saturday game. South Carolina travels to number 7 Alabama. This game will be in Tuscaloosa. It's a 12 noon kickoff. Vincent, I have to tell you, I wouldn't want to be in a South Carolina uniform. I think that the damage that's going to be done from the hurricane of Kalen DeBoer and the University of Alabama Crimson Tide football team is going to be very, very serious. They're going to make a statement, in my opinion. I'm just trying to think of a polite way to put it. They took a beating mentally and verbally and from the fan base and from the boosters because of that loss in Vanderbilt last year. I think they're going to make some corrections. Your thoughts?
I'm going to say this. Mike Lee, you brought up some good points that you just said that you expect Alabama to roll, but I think the pressure is on. South Carolina coming in playing with house money. Last week they got dominated by Ole Miss, but Alabama, the pressure is on, man. They ranked 7th in the country, a new coach, new defensive coordinator. This was stuck out to me in that Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. It wasn't that Alabama offense didn't play well. Remember, they had one mistake that led to a touchdown, a Jalen Milroe pick. But you know what stuck out to me most of all in that football game was the time of possession.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt having the ball 42 minutes. Alabama only having the ball 17 minutes. Alabama scored 34 points in 17 minutes. But another stat that stuck out to me in that game, I believe Vanderbilt was 8 of 12 on third down. So when you look overall, and you're a football player, Harper, you played at a high level, and I'm asking you, in my opinion, that's on the defense. So when you look at this football game, you don't think South Carolina's going to scheme because they got an athletic quarterback in Lenore Sellers. So when you look at what happened last week, Alabama had trouble stopping the run and that option play that Vanderbilt ran. So I'm going to give it back to you, Harper. South Carolina's coming in with house money. Pressure is on Alabama.
What they ended up doing last week, Vanderbilt's offense, is getting the sticks to move. I learned when I was in Green Bay, after I was done with Atlanta and I signed with the Packers, we had a preseason game in Madison at the University of Wisconsin, and we were playing against the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. And the Giants were playing their starters into the third quarter, but there was a point where late in the ball game, we needed to get a first down and we assure the win, and we got it. And then we could run the clock out. The timeout situation was in our favor. And that's what I noticed at the end of this game. They got a touchdown, Vanderbilt did. Bama comes back and scores within a minute and 30 seconds. They get another, they're within 4 or 5 points, and Vanderbilt scores again. And then Alabama scores, but they got the first downs when they needed to, and Bama couldn't stop the clock. So efficiency, being able to do things the right way. You make a good mention of the Alabama defense. They didn't play well that day, but I'm going to give credit to Vanderbilt's offense, especially their quarterback. He had a great game. Well, so we look at some of the stats of this game. South Carolina is 3-2. Lenore Sellers, you mentioned him, only 57% in his completions. He's got 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They can run the ball. Raheem Sanders, watch for him. He has 315 yards on the season, 4.8 yards per carry, and he has 4 touchdowns. The star of Alabama, Jalen Milroe, 73% completions. He's got over 1,270 yards already, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, so they can throw it. You've got Ryan Williams, who's averaging 28.6 yards per reception. I did say that, 28.6, 6 touchdowns for him. And then Jam Miller is their leading rusher. He's got 318 yards on 39 carries. He's averaging only 8.1 yards per carry. Alabama on offense, they are a juggernaut. They can move. And by the way, Miller has 5 touchdowns on the year. So I think the Crimson Tide will roll. Another game at noon that we won't talk about here, it didn't make it, but watch for Washington. They're 4-2 going against Iowa. First time they've been there in years. Iowa 3-2. I imagine from their loss last week against Ohio State, they're going to want to rebound and be 4-2 and be bowl eligible a little bit sooner. But that's another game that I think will have importance. But if you're in Texas or Oklahoma, is there anything more than the Red River rivalry? Say that 3 times real fast. 3:30 on ABC. You got the 5-0 Texas Longhorns against the 4-1 Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma led by Jackson Arnold, 59% completion percentage. He only has 538 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They're a running team first, and watch out for Javonte Barnes. 57 carries for him, 199 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But I think Arch Manning getting a chance to play, 70% completion in just the few games that he's been on the field, 900 yards already, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Alabama has to look up at Texas right now because Texas is the number 1 team in the nation, and their offense is very good. Their defense also plays well.
Okay. Oklahoma, first and foremost, Jackson Arnold has been benched. So Michael Hawkins came on, took over for him. That's going to be kind of working in Oklahoma's favor. I think Michael Hawkins is a better 2 of the quarterbacks. Looking at Texas, I want to see Arch Manning. Get some calls from some friends and say Arch Manning is the best quarterback in the country. He's got legs like his grandfather back in the day when Archie played at Ole Miss. The hype all around Arch Manning. And I tell people, it's good when you kind of having great stats against Texas, San Antonio, Mississippi State, but now you're going against a legitimate Oklahoma defense coached by a legitimate defensive coach in Brent Venables. And, of course, when you think about the Red River Shootout, it's one of the most classic college football games in the history of college football. And I think about my times in high school and all the great players that's played in that game. James Street, Chris Gilbert, Earl Campbell, Billy Sims, Thomas Lott, the Bars, Donnie Little, Kenny Sims, the coaches Barry Switzer, Darryl Rowe, Boomer, Sooner. I'm going to shock everybody. For our game of the week, the upset of the week, it's going to be the Oklahoma Sooners. They're going to take down the number 1 Texas Longhorns on Saturday. I'm stamping it today, and I'm putting my respect on my name. So next week, if Texas blows Oklahoma out, I take all the smoke. But I'm going with the Boomer Sooners because of their defense. Back to you, Harper.
You're making your prediction. I love it. All right. Texas has beaten Colorado State. They won at Michigan, University of Texas San Antonio, Louisiana Monroe, and Mississippi State. So they've only had 1 of their first 5 games on the road. This obviously at a neutral site. They've been doing this for years, but Texas will be on the road a lot more often. Oklahoma beat Temple, Houston, Tulane. They lost to Tennessee 2 weeks ago, and then they beat Auburn in Alabama last week. Our next game is going to be Penn State, who's ranked number 4 in the nation. They travel out to Southern California. Penn State led by Drew Aller, 70% completion percentage, 1,100 yards for him, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Nicholas Singleton, when he hands off to him, he averages 7.8 yards per carry. He has 3 touchdowns. I like USC. They're why I like college football. But I don't see how anyone from Penn State is going to be disappointed in the outcome of this one. I think Penn State goes into Southern California to roll things up there at the Coliseum.
I'm going to say this. When you look at this football game, I'm going to say Penn State. Penn State, to me, is the Georgia Tech of the South. What I mean by that, they tease you as being not so much Georgia Tech, but Penn State has teased you over the years as being a college football playoff team. I love James Franklin as a coach. I think he's done a great job at Vanderbilt. How long Franklin been there? About 10 years, right? You got the 12-team college football playoff and ranked number 4 in the country. This is a must-win game for you, sir. Because if y'all go out there to L.A., where my man Harper LeBel is from, and y'all don't beat USC, I'm going to have the same mindset about you, James Franklin. Overrated. Now, USC. Harper, you loved the school when you was in high school. You told me off record. See, I tell y'all a little tidbit. That was Harper's dream school, the Trojans. Lincoln Riley, Harper, he's getting paid a lot of money. He don't have Caleb Williams. They had a great win over LSU. They had a very disappointing loss to Michigan. But last week, they lose one of them games that Lincoln Riley getting paid all that money. You got to step back and say, how do y'all lose to Minnesota and you got better talent? How do y'all give up 10 unanswered points in the 4th quarter? Let me lean back. Well, I'm going to tell you this about the mighty Trojan family. Lincoln Riley, you lose this game to Penn State, what, you go 3-3? If I'm a USC alum and booster, I'm going to be looking at maybe I made a mistake, and I'm going to be looking at the coaching tree because that's not acceptable of what the mighty Trojans are paying Lincoln Riley. Back to you, Harper.
Well, do you think there's any portion of this where it comes in to say, hey, we're just not built to play Big Ten football. We're built to play West Coast, and we're going to need a little bit of time when we go to Minnesota, when we go to Columbus, when we go to Champaign, when we go to any of the other, when we go to Rutgers. Right now they beat Wisconsin, but they couldn't win at Michigan or at Minnesota. I'm just thinking out loud of there are some issues. It's going to take some time to be able to win at the Big Ten level. Look at UCLA. They haven't won any of their conference games yet.
Okay, but let's go back. When Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma in the middle of the night, he went to the Pac-12 when the Pac-12 was known as offense. So remember his first year with Caleb Williams, they did play in the conference championship game. They averaged almost 40-some points. I don't know the numbers, but they gave up 30-some points. So Lincoln Riley has always been known to have tremendous offenses. He's had 3 guys that's won the Heisman. But at the end of the day, we didn't see USC and UCLA finna join the Big Ten. That happened on his watch. So what you got now is that you got a situation that sometimes when you don't do right and you leave in the middle of the night as the head coach of Oklahoma and you take that glamour out there in Hollywood and you don't have a track record or a resume of you having a great, strong defense, this what happens when you get into a conference that's plays smash mouth football. Don't you agree, Harper?
Yeah, well, you had to be ready. It doesn't matter if it was Lincoln Riley or if it was Vincent Turner, whoever the coach is, whoever the athletic director is, whoever the recruiting coordinator is, you got to get yourself ready to play at that level. And, coming off Michigan being national champions, coming off Ohio State always being good, coming now with Penn State always finishing second or third in their division there, it's going to be tough and maybe a little bit tougher than what they thought. I don't know if you fire the coach because you lose to Minnesota or fire the coach because you're not ready to play within the conference.
Okay.
You've had 2.5 years to get ready for.
Let me ask you this, Harper. Okay. SC right now, they 3-2. They lose to Penn State, they 3-3. Let's say that they got more Big Ten teams they got to play. Let's say they go 7-5. Let's say they go 8-4. Let's say that even the Rails fall off, they 6-6. Okay. What do you do as a brash head of the USC alumni? What do you do if USC goes 7-5 and you paying Lincoln Riley? What Lincoln Riley is getting paid 10 to 11 million a year, correct? And you got all the facilities out there. You're in one of the greatest states of high school football. I'm just asking.
Yeah, you can't get the kids to come though. That's the thing. They're losing kids to other schools and universities that they never used to have to worry about because of a number of different reasons, but that's part of the issue. Absolutely. How do you change that? Is Lincoln Riley the problem, or is it anybody that would be there? Is that a problem? I'm not sure how to answer that, Vincent. I know they got to get better. They got to get bigger, faster, stronger. They are fast. There's no doubt about that, but I just don't think they have the depth that they need to in certain positions to be able to handle going up against the 315 and 330-pound linemen that you're going to see from Ohio State, from Michigan, from Illinois even, from Northwestern, and obviously from Penn State. Big guys, and you got to get ready for that.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's look at the next game. We got, speaking of Ohio State, in Columbus. Number 2 team in the nation goes against number 3. Oregon moves up a little bit further than what I thought they would from 6 last week, but Eugene, Oregon, we're going to host what I consider to be the game of the week. The number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes come into town. They're 5-0. They're 2-0 in the conference. Will Howard, 71% completion percentage out of him, 1,248 yards. Will Howard has 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Quinshon Judkins, 7.8 yards. He was a little over 8, but last week, he had a couple where he had 6 yards per carry. How do you not keep giving him the ball? 5 touchdowns for him, 60 carries, 468 yards. And Jeremiah Smith gets on my radar here now. 23 receptions, 453 yards for him. He's averaging 19 yards a catch. He has 6 touchdowns. How do you stop Ohio State's offense right now? And by the way, before I move on, their defense, they're averaging 6.8 yards a ball game. Nobody has scored more than 7 points against them.
When I think about this football game, and of course, I think about speed. I think about a track meet. I think about NFL talent that's going to be all over the field on Saturday night. In Oregon, Dan Lanning, I want to give kudos to you. I think you've done a phenomenal job. When you took that job out there, I had my reservations about you. But, hey, you got Oregon playing at a high level. Dylan Gabriel is a fantastic football player. Jordan James is an NFL talent. Evan Stewart is an NFL talent. But you're going against Ohio State. And I'm going to say this. I said Georgia, in my opinion, is the best team in the country. I might need to recant that statement a little bit because Ohio State has got talent everywhere, man. Chip Kelly, I didn't really know about him coming in as an offensive coordinator. And I told you on a previous show, my concern with Ohio State was at their quarterback position, Will Howard. He's played flawless. This football team, Ryan Day, I see why the people in Columbus say, if you do not get to the national championship game, you need to be fired. It's no question about it. Harper, this football team, the Ohio State Buckeyes, might be the most talented football team that's came in college football in the last 40 years. They have talent on the D-line. They got talent on the offensive line. Throw names out there. Caleb Downs, Denzel Burke, Quishon Junkins, as you just mentioned, Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Jack Sawyer, Talik, I can't think of the young man's name, the defensive tackle. Excuse me today here on 100 Yards Football. This is a football team, their first 22. The Ohio State Buckeyes are the most talented team in the country. And I'm going to say this. If they go into Oregon and they steamroll Oregon, then I'm going to tell you this. Everybody across the country from east to coast to the south, you better be on notice about that team coming out of Columbus. Woody Hayes and the 68 Super Sophomores might be coming back through the door. Jack Tatum and Rex Kern. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Yeah, they're pretty phenomenal when you stop to think about it. I remember earlier in the year, I was just looking at the recruiting, the makeup. ESPN has a place on the website where you can go look at each school's upcoming class, who they have coming in. And they've been doing it for years, but they've got the most ESPN 300 guys. They got the most. You know, they get the 5 stars. There's only a certain amount, and they get one more than it seems everybody else. Now, Alabama has always been very competitive in that manner. SC has been good and competitive. So is, name Texas, right? Anybody. You know, they get a couple, but it seems like when you count them all up, Ohio State has one more than you. In some cases, they've got 2 or 3 more. So they have done a great job of recruiting, and, you know, their depth, that's the biggest issue in college football, in my opinion. Who goes in if someone gets hurt? And is that guy as good as the guy you've got there? And Ohio State seems to answer that bell very well. Well, Oregon is going to have to play an incredible football game, in my opinion. And offensively, you know, just to get that 9th point, 10th point, whatever it is, Dylan Gabriel is going to have a big game. He's at 77%. He's very, very good right now. 1,449 yards. He has 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Jordan James is their leading rusher. He averages 6.2 per carry. He has 5 touchdowns for them. I put Tez Johnson in here as well. Tez has 43 receptions for 395 yards. He has 5 touchdowns. He's the guy that you're going to have to stop if you're Ohio State. Boise is one of the big competitors that they've gone against. Oregon State. They won at UCLA, and then last week they beat Michigan State. So Oregon has a little bit of a resume that I respect, and I think they'll play well. I just don't know if they have the firepower to take Ohio State on and beat them in their backyard. All right, let's look at the final game that we have on ABC. That'll be Ole Miss and LSU. Both teams are ranked. The Ole Miss Rebels are 5-1. They're 1-1 in the conference. Jackson Dart, 2,100 yards already, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Henry Parrish, 91 carries. He has 570 yards. He has 9 touchdowns. Trey Harris is averaging 17 yards a catch. He has 5 touchdowns. Tell me something that I'm missing about Ole Miss right now. Offensively, they are on fire.
I think when you look at Ole Miss got some respect from last week. That was a very big football game for them, South Carolina, based on the fact they lost to Kentucky, and everybody was saying, here we go again, Ole Miss overrated. Lane
Yep.
Kiffin then went to
Yep.
the transfer portal. He's spent all this money. And there was a lot of people on the national scale saying, okay, let's back up on the young man from California, Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. But that was a very impressive win. And what was impressive to me is how they dominated the line of scrimmage. It wasn't so much they scored 27 points. They physically beat up South Carolina at South Carolina. Now, LSU. When I think about this game, and I want to apologize to all my people out here at 100 Yards Football, I think of alcohol being in the air on Saturday night. Because, they get crazy down there in Baton Rouge. Harper, you know what I'm talking about. Our man, Mr. Harper LeBel, is a very talented guy. He's also part of the Georgia State Football Network. So he's been in that stadium down there in Baton Rouge. And I think about the history of the game. And I think about one player that everybody talks about. When you mention LSU, you got to go back to October 31st, 1959. What's that guy name? His initials BC, Billy Cannon. This 89-yard punt return on Halloween, 1 year before I was born. And then I go back to November the 4th, 1972. I was 12 years old listening to the Ole Miss Football Network on WHBQ out of Memphis, where LSU ran 2 plays in 4 seconds, and Burt Jones hit Brad Davis for a touchdown as the nationally ranked LSU Tigers beat Ole Miss that night. So I think about all that going into this football game. And, of course, all the great players. Archie Manning, my man Barry Wilburn, know him personally, former Washington Redskin. Of course, LSU, you can talk about history all the way back. Charlie McClinton, the head coach, Terry Robisky, who Harper. It's going to be a phenomenal game. This is what football in the South is about. Saturday night at Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The food is going to be good. The fans are going to be at another level. And 2 teams coming in ranked. Because whoever loses this game might be looking outside when we talk about the college football playoffs. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, I have to admit, the atmosphere will be something different than it has been in the past when Ole Miss comes into town. Real quick, just to look at LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, 1,652 yards for him, 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Caden Durham, 29 carries for him, 244 yards. He has 3 touchdowns. When you look at LSU's schedule, their loss to USC in the opener, they beat Nicholls State, South Carolina, UCLA, and South Alabama. This is one of those first big games. There'll be several more throughout the course of the season. But in terms of this one is the beginning of whether or not we know what it's going to take to get to an SEC championship. We'll know after Saturday night's game is over. A lot of great games coming up. It's still way too early to define who will get through their divisions, their conferences, but it's going to begin right about now for us to see the cream rise to the top, the best teams in the nation. And we'll be featuring them throughout the course of the season. We'll be talking a lot more about teams that are not in the Sun Belt, like what we're looking at here, but there will be some difference makers. And I think now starting at week 7, going into week 9, 12, week 13, if you will, we're going to have a much better interpretation of who is going to be playing in that 12-team national championship race. Final thoughts, Vincent, before we go?
Final thoughts this week, I want to see how good really Texas is. I want to say the legacy of Archie Manning. Is he on the same level as grandfather Archie Manning? When we're talking about athletic, speed, the whole package. And as you just mentioned, Harper, this week is starting. And I think about this. Help me out on this music history tidbit I want to bring up. Looking at all these games, and we're going to start right here. All these teams that's right now who we think is going to be a college football playoff team, they're going to be put on blast leading up from here on out to a college football season. So when I look at this schedule this Saturday, what I'm going to come away with, Harper, help me out. Who's the lead singer for that group? The Pretenders from London, England.
Chrissy Hynde.
That's what I think about. The Pretenders. Back to you, Harper.
All right. Well, Chrissy Hynde will go back to Ohio And well, I'm going to watch the Buckeyes a little bit different. You know, I'm not going to wait till the end of the season and have them play Michigan till I really focus on them. I'm going to put a little bit of attention here in what they do in Eugene and see whether or not they're pretenders or contenders. Well, we want to thank you for watching today's show. We appreciate you being a part of it. Please, everybody, pray for our nation.
Absolutely.
And the well-being for everybody in Florida trying to escape the hurricane. We went through one here in Georgia just a couple of weeks ago in Helene, and there was more damage than I certainly thought. We lost a tree or two, but there's some folks that still don't have power. So a lot of things are very important. So let's keep that in mind. But for Vincent Turner, for Logan Landers, for Harper LeBel, we want to say thank you for tuning in to 100 Yards of Football. Have a great day, everybody. We appreciate you being a part of the show.